How many years do you think you'd been selling until you had that realisation that you're crap?
Yeah, probably.
Talk to me about that moment then. You'd had a few roles, including head of sales.
Yeah. So when I went to business development job, I sat down with a guy who's called Paddy. And I sat there for 2 weeks and I was like, wow, that's a coach, that's a leader. And wow, I'm crap at sales. I didn't realise I'd just been winging it. And then I look back at my whole career, I was like, wow, how did I get to where I got to doing it that way?
When you look back now, before Paddy, what would you score yourself?
I would not hire me in a heartbeat. No, I wouldn't have hired me.
Why?
There was days where I was like, oh, like when the quote was getting higher and you're not able to hit it, I couldn't work out a way to hit it. I remember when I took this job on, I was convinced Brian, the managing director, made a mistake.
Impostor syndrome.
Yeah, very much so. Because I just had the moment of losing the job, not being good enough. Like, they're going to find me out again. I had that mindset. I was like, I'm going to get found out again. I think imposter syndrome, it actually is such a good thing to sometimes have.
How'd you get over that? You've almost said, like, I wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for my coach.
Yeah.
How so? You've obviously met hundreds, if not thousands, of salespeople.
Yeah.
Most don't have a coach. What do you think about that?
Years and years ago, I would be like, why? Now I'm like, why not? Why don't you have one?
Welcome to another episode of the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ackers, and today I'm joined by someone who's responsible for coaching and developing the future sales talent at Leyton, their head of sales development UK. It's Jack Hankey. Jack, welcome. Great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolute pleasure. Let's just kick it off with a yes/no question.
Yep.
Did you used to be crap at sales?
Yes.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So why don't we first of all, right, tell us just a little bit about your background. Mm-hmm. Bring it to life for us. I know you've actually got a sporting background, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't we start there, because I think it links very nicely to what you do now in Leyton. But just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So going right back to the start, I used to play tennis when I was quite a bit younger. Still do play now. And then went through a pretty intense coaching system. Got taken out of school for the best part of a year at 11. Decided I wanted to go back to school. Weirdly enough, not many kids would say that. And then got coached by some really good coaches. Was around professional players. It was brilliant exposure, but just missed school. And then, played tennis till I was about 16. And then decided to go into coaching probably about 17, 18, just because it was a great Saturday job to have. Paid better than pot washing. Spent some time working with various different coaches all over the country, and then became a head coach at a tennis club in Wimbledon, the epicentre of tennis, one may say. When I was about 22, 23, coached a player to junior Wimbledon quarterfinals. That I felt like I'd doing really good and just didn't enjoy it so much. Felt like I'd kind of hit my ceiling of what I wanted to achieve in the sport. So then I moved into sales. Got a job at a company called Mannheim Car Auctions, very old school company, but it's the business my dad always worked in. So he'll say he didn't help me get the job, but he definitely did. And then I just progressed through my career working at a sports clothing company. Then moved into like health and safety software, and then I'm here at Leyton now.
I mean, just playing that back.
Yeah.
You got taken out of school to play tennis.
Yes.
How old were you then?
11. 11, year 7.
I didn't even know that sort of thing happened.
Yeah, it does. It's a bit different now. They have schools within the centres as such. So like you with your peers. I was on my own. I was the youngest person there. There was 3 or 4 of us at this academy. It was in Bolton. And the others were in like year 9, year 10. And that part of the school we went to for maths and English, their school was on another site. So I didn't even have them around me. But now it's all like built in. Like you have the academies where everything's in house, so you're in a classroom with your peers and you're doing your schoolwork that way. Right. So it's a little bit of a old way, but yeah.
But you must have been. Like, I appreciate you won't say it, but I'll say it. You must have been exceptional at tennis at 11 to be taken out of school. Like, just how good were you? Because I know tennis has like seedings and ranking systems. But I don't know if that applies that low.
I was actually, I think I was like top 10, maybe 6th, 7th in the country at that point.
For your age, or?
Yeah, like under 12s. I wasn't the best, But I actually wasn't that tall then, and obviously I don't know if people could see it. I'm sat down now, but I'm like 6'5", so they do all the bio testing on you, and they're like, technically he's good, but he's gonna get better because he's gonna basically come out pretty tall.
They did a test to see how tall you were going to be.
Yeah, they can do like tests of like your feet and like bio stuff. I don't know. I don't really understand it all, but yeah, you've got like loads of wires on me when I was a kid sometimes and stuff like that.
Must be a diet of tuna and egg lasagnas.
Yeah, tuna lasagna or just tuna, cheese and pasta as well.
Maybe I will give it a go.
Legitimately, yeah, that's what I would eat all the time.
But no, yeah, I think that's gone for me. But I saw, as soon as I saw you today for the first time in the flesh, you say, bloody hell, I was looking up.
Yeah.
So you're in the top 10, maybe 6th or 7th, you say, for your age at 11, taken out, playing tennis. I couldn't help, right? Kind of come to it later on the podcast, but let's dive into it now. You said you had some good coaches.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I had 3 really top coaches that really resonate with me. One was a guy called Rowan. He was like my first coach. I cried when he moved to Turkey, and I cried. Because he spent a lot of time with me, gave me the belief. He was at the point where I was technically getting to a decent level. I think I was about 8 and 9. And then luckily his mate had just moved up into Manchester area, and he took over coaching me, and he was great. He's called Brian McFadden. He's down in Dorking, I think now, has his own tennis club there, but he was a performance coach, and he was just so much fun to be around. Still like the jokes he would just crack on the tennis court. It just made you feel so comfortable. And that's it. Like when I was in school, I was getting at the tennis court at 6 a.m, playing tennis, going to school, coming out of school, playing tennis, fitness training. These guys understood that it has to be fun. I saw plenty of coaches that didn't make it fun. And that's kind of what I try and do now with work and stuff. Like, sales is hard, you have to learn how to do it, but let's have fun while we're doing it. And then Dave Samuel was someone I still speak to sometimes, because he's like a mindset coach as well as a tennis coach, and travels all around the world doing that. And he was the opposite. He was intense, but yeah, he was good friends with my dad, and he coaches a guy called Liam Brody now, who's top 100 in the world. And yeah, he very intense, but you worked for him. He made you run through walls.
Let's move the conversation on a little bit then to sales.
Yeah.
So no one grows up wanting to be in sales.
Yeah.
I can't imagine when you're at the tennis courts you're thinking, get me out of here, I can't wait to get my first sales job.
Yep.
You said you moved into sales quite quickly.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So my father was worked in sales, so I've seen it. I've been around it all my life. And I take a lot of inspiration from him, how hard he works. And I just felt like, as a tennis coach, I think I was selling anyway. Because if I'm not showing that I'm the best coach or around the club, they're just going to go to another coach. So I had to sell myself anyway, with my strengths and weaknesses as a coach, and, sell my USPs and all that. I was naturally doing it without knowing I was doing it. So then when I look back at what I wanted to do, I kind of felt that the only thing I really can do is selling, because I didn't have any degree or anything like that. I was kind of like, that was my mindset at the time. But then when I look back, when I then looked into it, I was like, actually, I've been selling for years, just a different product. So let's just go and sell something else.
So there's a few interesting things you said there. I agree with you. I think, and I definitely want to get into how you coach your team today and the links to tennis, etc. Because I think the links there are just unparalleled. But you said you saw how hard your dad worked.
Yes.
So talking to you as a parent, right? I've got my lad. I don't think, and maybe there's an age thing there, but I think they probably have got no idea how hard the parent works when they're in sales, because they're just sat making calls all day, or they're on discovery calls. Like, I feel like, it's hard for it. Like, if you did a physical job and you left the house really early and you were out, maybe the kid could appreciate that. How did you know your dad was working really hard?
Because back in the day, it wasn't Teams. I think it was mobile calls and cars, and I was in the passenger seat.
Right, okay.
We were driving to tennis coaching or tournaments, and I was just listening. And he was like, "Hey, I want to go," and then pick the phone up.
Right.
So I had to pretend I wasn't there, and then if I had to get out the car, I had to slowly shut the door. So it was like that's how I knew he was working, because he was constantly on the phone. And I don't know I can't tell you what he was talking about, but to me that was saying like, oh, he's always working.
Right.
And then at the weekend as well, he was always traveling with me. I can't imagine how testing it would have been on mum and dad's relationship when we were doing that, because he was traveling all over the country. He lived down south. I don't remember it. We were actually talking about it the other day. He lived down south for 3 days of the week sometimes, because that's where the head office was, and he took a step back in his career to get into this company. And so, yeah, when I talk to him now, I appreciate it much more now. But I also, we had a nice life when we got older and stuff as kids, and I know it was down to my mum and dad's hard work.
It must have been to be able to play tennis all the time.
Yeah, well, I was funded a lot of tennis stuff, to be fair, but yeah.
No, the old stereotype. Okay, so it sounds like then, even though you say now I can't tell you what he was talking about, you would have been learning just through osmosis, just hearing sales calls, etc. Mm-hmm. What kind of sales person do you think your dad was when you look back and analyse him now?
Relationships.
Okay.
That's what he built his whole career on. Like, he's had a really good career. Look at it; it's a career that you would dream of having, as if you wanted to do that. He argues now that when we talk about who's in the family like the better salesman, I'll say him, he'll say me, which is quite nice. But yeah, relationship guys, he was very much making his clients feel that if they were to move to another provider or whatever, that they were going to miss the stuff that my dad did with them. It's like he would take them. He's very old school. Would take them to concerts. He took people to the Royal Box at Wimbledon, like little things like that. And he always takes their partners with him. He was just very much, that was his life. Like, he would wine and dine people, make sure they feel $1 million whenever on site or anything like that. That's how he did it.
So I know you were telling me earlier on your dad was in car auction sales. Mm-hmm. Very different to sales you're in today.
Yeah.
So really it felt like you were looking at, I need to get a job. You knew what your dad done. You had a lot of exposure to that, wanted to get into sales.
Yeah.
Your first job, you said that earlier on. Where was your first job again?
A company called Mannheim.
That's it. I've lost the notes here. So tell me about what Mannheim did.
Yeah, so they were a car auction company.
Literally followed straight into
yeah. So they were a car auction company. Went as a junior account manager. Like I say, my dad, he was actually working in Australia for the company at the time. And he said he didn't help me get it, but he did.
He got it.
And yeah, so it felt like I was doing my dad's job, because I would leave the house Monday morning with a suitcase and I'd come home probably Thursday night, Friday afternoon, because I'd be going to all the sites all around the country. So I was an account manager for, like a car company where you sell your car or you get the cash. Like, we buy any car or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was one of those, not that one, it was another one of them.
Right.
But I looked after, and I basically did all the on-site for him.
So you were there, I've got my notes now, I lost it, but you were there for just over a year, weren't you?
Yes.
How comes you didn't stay much longer?
I didn't like being my dad's son.
Okay.
So there was maybe about 6 or 7 months in, I was at a site in Colchester. That's where the MD was based. And the MD comes to me and goes, "Do you want to get lunch?" My boss had never spoken to him. And I was like, and then he said to me in that lunch, "What's it like to be a Hankey in this industry?" I was like, "I'm done."
Right.
I wanted to carve my own story at that point. I kind of realised, it was so good being your dad's son, but you're always going to be Mark's son. And I don't want to.
Not me, your dad's called Mark.
Yeah. I wanted to be Jack.
Yeah.
So I knew I couldn't be in that industry.
So then you moved to, how would you pronounce this? Cookery Sports?
Cookery Sports, yeah, I loved that job. That was brilliant. That was my two I say passions. Now it's a passion, but then it probably wasn't sales. Two passions coming together, selling sports clothing, and it was just perfect. All I would do was talk about sport all day to various different schools or sports clubs, like a lot of cricket teams and rugby teams wear cookery. Different world to what I was used to, not the two traditional sports I liked, but I got into them. Sport.
And then from there to head of sales at Simon Jersey, then you're a senior BDM, and now we find you at Leyton.
Yeah.
Leyton's a company I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a company that probably most people wouldn't be familiar with, though.
Yeah.
Tell us about Leyton, just what problems do they solve?
Yeah, so Leyton in itself is a tax consultancy firm. So we basically help companies access funding for tax relief that the government sets up. Notoriously, it's kind of hard to understand, to do it. So we're the guys who will then help you deliver like research and development, CCL, capital allowances, anything that really will help business reduce the tax bill. We'll support them in that. And
your role today, I appreciate you've grown with the company, but today you look after the SDR team for the UK and Casablanca, is that right?
Yeah. So there's a UK, so the whole of the UK, so I've got teams in Glasgow, Manchester, London, and then we have 2 teams in Casablanca as well. Casablanca is a huge office, so it's like, or they support the whole world of Leyton. So like we have offices all over the world,
Yeah. And how many SDRs do you have sort of feeding up into you?
I think it's about 60 as we sit here today.
Wow, so that's a huge SDR team.
It's including managers in that, but still.
Yeah, that ultimately you're responsible for.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I asked you at the start, did you used to be crap at sales?
Yeah.
You said yes.
Uh-huh.
What part of your career sprung to mind when you answered that question?
When I went to be a senior business development before I joined Leyton.
And that was
at SG World.
And so, okay, so talk to me about that moment then, because I'm guessing at that point you didn't realise you were crap because you'd had a few roles, including head of sales.
Yeah. Kind of took a step back and was like, I need to go back and sell because I thought I was a bit too young, like, green behind the ear, or just a bit green. And so when I went to that business development job, I sat down with a guy who's called Paddy. And to this day, like, he will never hear this. He won't listen to podcasts. Like, he loved reading, but he's just not big on like LinkedIn and stuff. And I sat there for 2 weeks and I was like, wow, that's a coach, that's a leader. And wow, I'm rubbish, I'm crap at sales. Like, I didn't realise I'd just been winging it. And then I look back at my whole career, I was like, wow, how did I get to where I got to doing it that way? And there was points when I was selling, I was like, I knew I was every point I just was, no, I'm not doing a good job here and all that. But yeah, with Paddy, and then I went out with him and he would sit, we would go and see someone and he would sit there after it. I got the sale. He wouldn't talk to me about the sale. He'd talk to me about points in that I can work on. It was mind blowing. But I didn't get to work for him very long because COVID hit and I was working in the public sector. So it was a bit sad, really. But I wouldn't have found myself at Leyton.
So do the maths for me, because there's a little bit of this. You were selling as a tennis coach as well.
Yeah.
How many years? It's at least 5 that I can see from my research, but we've got the tennis coach aspect as well. Yeah. How many years do you think you'd been selling until you had that realisation that you're crap?
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 years.
It'd be longer than that, wouldn't it? Because of the tennis coach aspect.
Oh, with the tennis coaching, oh gosh, yeah,
that's
probably
point,
8.
Yeah. So close to a decade in sales in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And then you had this moment that I'm crap.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it really just become down to the fact you got exposure to someone that was better than you and showed you a better way.
Yeah, coached.
So how did you survive so long? Like, when you say you were crap, like, let's be really clear, right? Maybe you're being unfair. When you look back now, before Paddy, maybe there's a before Paddy, after Paddy talk track here. Before Paddy, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being elite, 1 being crap.
Yeah.
When you look back now, before Paddy, what would you score yourself?
I would not hire me in a heartbeat. That's probably a 3 or 4.
Okay. You wouldn't hire you in a heartbeat?
No, I wouldn't have hired me as a salesperson.
Is this so post Paddy? If you were to look at you before Paddy, you wouldn't hire that person?
No.
Why?
I think I had all the work ethic, which is that's part of the battle, right, in sales. But what I was doing was it was all luck, in my opinion. I was very lucky, and then there was days where I was like, when the quote was getting higher and you're not able to hit it, I couldn't work out a way to hit it. So I had to really when I look back, I really needed to just take a step. I didn't really try and make myself better. I just thought I'm doing okay. There's maybe a bit of ego there. So
unless something changed, I can just imagine you did have a strong work ethic. You're playing tennis at 6 o'clock in the morning from 11 o'clock. Like, I appreciate you might not say you were an elite athlete, but for an 11-year-old, You probably were. And like whenever I've had the chance to speak to people that have been like Olympians or whatnot and moved into sales, it's always like the mindset, like just staggering, really.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it probably wasn't work ethic. You probably had that.
Yes.
I can appreciate ego as well, right? You've probably had it fed to you since you're a really young age that you're exceptional. You're going to do not the best, but you're really good.
Yeah.
Right? So you get this Paddy moment. Before Paddy, you're now able to reflect back and go, I was a 3 or 4, wouldn't harm in heartbeat. Before Paddy, what do you think you would have scored yourself?
Oh, like an 8 or a 9. Because I still like, if I look at the results were all right.
Yeah.
But actually look at the fundamentals of the job. They weren't great. So before Paddy, I would have gone, look at my numbers. But it's just that ego settling in. I had people in sales who were, their career was going at quite an upward trajectory around me, like friends. And mine, I felt like I was kind of stalling a little bit at that point. That's why I took I don't class it as a step back, but I went from head of sales to then go and being a salesperson again, because that was when, like, the moment it was before I met Paddy. I was like, I need to learn. I am not nowhere near where I need to be as a person, as a salesperson. And so I think I probably would give 8 or 9.
So you said like Paddy won't listen to this, and that's fine. Yeah. But
he might do.
Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But either way, do you think Paddy, if he heard what you just said, would have realised he made you feel that way?
No way. He doesn't. He won't realise the impact he's had on me.
Right.
To this day, I still think about this type of coaching he did with me and how I could implement it. I'd worked with him for such a short amount of time, but he's probably the person who's probably had the biggest impact on my career, and he won't realise that. And
why have you not told him?
I don't know. I've never really reached out to him because he's not that type of guy. He wouldn't. He might like it, but my relationship with him, when it was only short, he never really wanted the praise or anything. He just wasn't that guy. He was an opposite of a salesperson, a stereotypical salesperson.
Right. So we realise we're crap.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to turn it around?
So when I've realised it, that I was struggling and I wasn't great, it was doubling down on me and getting me better. Everyone who works in sales or is able to learn product to sell or skill set or services, you obviously have a capability to take in information. So if your part of your job isn't great, why not? And you're able to highlight that, or your manager or anything like that, are able to highlight it, which I was able to highlight it on Paddy, etc. I then just double down, learn how to work it. Like that work ethic steps in, and then I just try to learn. I would just I used to spend Saturday morning watching sales podcasts on YouTube, just because I enjoyed it and I wanted to try and get a new skill set. Sunday nights I would watch videos, and then I'd talk to people about it the day after to try and get them to watch them. I become a bit obsessed.
And obviously that's great to hear that you realise sales was a skill, one that could be fine-tuned and perfected. I'm guessing that still took a long time though to get to the levels you're at now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm good at sales now. I still say I'm better, but I'm now complete opposite to what I used to be, where I'd think I was the best. Now I'm like, I'd probably say I'm not as good as I am. Right. Where, there's times where, I'll go into a meeting and I'll feel like I'm doing a good job, but not done a great job. There's times when I've had someone shadow me in a meeting and I've completely messed it up. But I thought it was a great coaching situation, like showing a bit of vulnerability. He was a new salesperson, so I was like, look, did that on purpose. I obviously didn't, but you can position it. So yeah, it takes a long time.
I bet. What's the lowest point you've had in sales? Like when you realise you're crap, it's not going for you, you're not hitting your numbers. You talk about like mucking up sales. We've all done that multiple times, right? What if I say to you, like, what's the lowest point you've had in sales? What would you say?
It was probably losing my job at SG World. It was out of my control slightly, but he kept some salespeople on. So I cried. I was upset. I was really upset.
So what happened? Tell me the story.
COVID hit, had to make redundancies. They reviewed everyone's performance. I'd only been there. I'd only actually worked from probably for 6-7 months before COVID. And yeah, I got a phone call. You were not scored you high enough on what we were scoring people on. It was from the, to be fair, it was from the CEO. Like he called everyone, which I thought was pretty good thing for him to do. But yeah, and then at that point, I ended up just getting a job driving at Amazon, like doing Amazon delivery and working for a mate, driving all over. My mate had a logistics company, and I was like, I just need money. I need to work. That was probably the lowest point in my career in sales. It was like, and then I've missed out on big deals, but they don't really hurt that much. That personally hurt me a lot.
And why did it personally hurt you? Was it because you've been scored, or because, like, I mean, it's not nice to lose a job, but
yeah,
it feels like it was a mass call rather than personal to you.
No, it was just he just called me personally on my mobile. Though. It was all like, it wasn't to everyone, but.
So my point being, though, like, it wasn't a personal decision to get rid of you.
Yes.
It was like a mass cull, so to speak.
Yeah, but it felt personal because of the scoring.
Right.
And it felt I should have done more. I could have kept my job. I wouldn't have had to, as much as I wasn't able to do much, we were getting back into doing it, going out selling at that time, and I hadn't done good enough. And that was the first time probably I've been told, you're not good enough at this. Well, that's how it felt anyway.
What could you have done differently then? Like, what was in your control?
I don't know, really. Like, when I look back, like, I think I didn't really understand the product that well. I actually think my work ethic probably dipped slightly. I was really focused on my development at that point. And I kind of lost sight of, getting out and about. It was a time just before, like, obviously teams meetings and all that. You were in the car driving everywhere. Your car was the office. And I was like, if I didn't have anything on, I would just be like, right, I'm going to develop myself today rather than picking up the phone, which is what I used to do. Knocking on doors. I used to turn up with that donuts and say, I've got delivery for people. And then I say, here's the delivery, can I have 10 minutes of your time?
How often did you do that?
I did that quite a lot. I learned that from my first job, a guy called Steve Watts. He's like, I'd get it when I was training. He would just have backseat be full of donuts. He's like, right, we're going prospecting. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, just going to go knock on some doors, say I've got delivery from. See if they give me 10 minutes to get the donuts either way. I was like, wow.
I mean, I'm so confident that most people that listen to this podcast would never contemplate doing that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought of it, but he showed me, and then I started doing it because it worked. It genuinely did work. Who's going to turn down like free donuts? Like, and the people we were speaking to, they were decision makers, but they weren't necessarily bombarded with meetings at the time because, again, it was a different world. So yeah.
So let's just be really clear. You would just pick some businesses that you wanted to speak to.
Yep. So like an industrial estate or something like that, yeah.
You'd go and buy a load of donuts.
Donuts and cookies, yeah.
Krispy Kremes, or what are we talking?
Tesco's.
Oh, okay. So it's not like
no, I'm not spending too much money.
No, that's so like, that's interesting though. So like literally, do you know when you get like the pack of the raspberry jam, you get five so like $5 for a quid kind of job?
Kind of job, and I'll say, do you want to have this, and we'll have a coffee kind of thing, yeah.
And literally, you go to reception and say, I've
got a delivery for X.
It's just 5 Tesco extra special jam donuts.
Yeah. And they show he's busy or they're busy. I'll be like, okay, that's the delivery. I've got my car now. Every time to give me a call. 9 times I tend to call you because you're giving them donuts.
They would call you 9 times.
Yeah. Like, they would just say, oh no, I'm not interested. But you still get the call. It was lucky. Like it was not lucky.
That's not lucky.
It was a random thing I learned. I still talk about it to the day. Like I'm obviously talking about that, but I tell you guys, like when they're saying, "Oh, it's quite tough." When I used to go and knock on doors with donuts, guys. Come on, like let's go and do it.
So obviously that proposition exists today, but it's very different.
Yes,
there's a few companies out there that will allow you to gift prospects.
Yes.
Do you dabble with any of that?
We did do it. So because obviously I've done a few different roles at Leyton. I used to manage a BD team. I had a guy who used to send tea and biscuits to prospects.
Right.
And so if you booked them for a meeting, he would send it out pre-meeting, and the meeting would be position the meeting as let's have a coffee and biscuits together virtually.
Yeah.
He also sent, like, he came up with the idea on that, and he also sent his previous company used to send socks, personalised socks to prospects.
Bloody love socks.
Yeah, he does it, right? Like some like quirky socks.
Yeah, I've got parrots on today, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, what are you got?
Just a standard black today because I'm wearing black
boots.
boots.
Need some send,
Yeah.
So When you're like having this difficult time, right, and you're struggling, it feels like there's been a number of different examples you could talk about there. But obviously, mindset's a big thing for you. You talk about mindset as a tennis player. Where's your mindset at when you're really struggling in sales and you've been let go or you've lost big deals, etc.? Talk about what happens to your mindset.
Probably goes up and down a little bit. Initially, I'm pretty flawed. Like, so what I used to do, I still would do. There's like a Crown Green Bowls place opposite my house, so I just go and watch and just sit in silence, just trying to get my thoughts together. And then I kind of like the work ethic side of me will kick in, the bravado that I'm gonna be okay, kind of put on a bit of a show, but then in the background quietly just try and develop myself. I think you need that moment. Me going sitting and watching them guys play Crown Green Bowls, that is like the moment where it's just you on your own. I've either got my dog with me or I'm just on my own. And it's just silence, and you can hear these guys arguing about the match and stuff. And it's like, you know what, like, you've had some bad news here. Accept it, be in your thoughts, but go and do something about it now.
I love that. It's kind of like your reset place.
Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone needs that.
Yeah, sit on the same bench when I do it, and I've cried there, I've been happy there, like, it's a good spot.
You've mentioned cry a few times. Like, are you quite in touch? Like, you'll cry quite easily, or not really?
No, I don't get. I'm in touch with my emotions. I would say, but I wouldn't say I'm like a crier.
Right.
Like, the probably 2 or 3 times I can really remember as an adult really breaking down. Last year I broke down when my granddad died. Very close to my granddad, and we lost him years ago because he wasn't very well. But and then other than that, it's always been me. Like, if it's on me, I'm not really cried at situations or breakups or anything like that. But when it's me, I just feel like, I don't know, it's like a letdown, maybe a letdown thing and all that. I've let myself down and get annoyed and get a bit upset.
Have you found, as you've got older and just naturally with age matured in sales, you've had less of those moments, or do you still put that self-pressure on yourself?
I've not really had them sort of moments in the sense of where I feel like I've let myself down. At Leyton, definitely not. But I put an immense amount of pressure on myself. And I remember my first 6 months at Leyton, I was waking up thinking, is this my last day here?
Why?
Just because I thought I was going to fail my probation the whole way through. That just drove me. There was nothing Leyton did. Leyton, obviously, it was absolutely nothing. It was like just all me. I was like, because I just had the moment of losing the job, not being good enough. I'm like, they're going to find me out again. I had that mindset. I was like, I'm going to get found out again.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, very much so.
How'd you get over that?
Passed my probation. No, I still have it. I remember when I took this job on, I was convinced Brian, the managing director, made a mistake. And that's how and that drove me though. But I need to prove him that he hasn't. I have it. I think imposter syndrome actually is such a good thing to sometimes have. You can't drown in it. But if you constantly like, not necessarily do I belong here, but should I be doing this? Should I be here? Can I do this? That's a real good driver. Because if you have that in there, can I do this? Yeah, I can. I need to try and do it. I want to prove myself wrong here. I don't think there's anything better than that.
It's almost like harnessing a weakness.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Almost everyone has imposter syndrome.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And it's like, it's so good to hear you speaking about it so openly and honestly.
Yeah.
Because anyone that listens to this is going to go, I felt that way.
Yeah.
I feel that way. And what I love about it is how you turn it into a positive.
Yeah.
And it drives you on. And I just can't help but feel this is all fueled by your sporting background and the coaching and 6 o'clock in the morning starts. Like, just that constant pushing of you, not quite sure if you're going to make it, if you're going to be the best. You go into sales, following your dad's footsteps. It's going to give you that imposter syndrome. Having a failure at one company where you got let go. I understand all of those thoughts and feelings and can just relate to it, as I'm sure everyone can. I really appreciate you being so open and honest. When you are feeling this way, who do you talk to?
My dad. Like, my dad's an old school guy, but I remember when I first told him I was struggling, he surprised me of how modern he was in his thinking about people's mindsets, and not necessarily mental health, because I've not struggled with that, but he knew that, you know, you could go down that slippery slope sometimes. So yeah, I speak to my dad just to. It's also like, I think my dad enjoys it. He's retired now, and he's retired. It's his third time he's retired. He's come back. But I remember the first time he retired, I really talked to him about work, and you could tell he was like, his sharpness was going ever so slightly. He's not old, but you know, you're working every day, and then you're not. So that's probably why I went back. Now I talk to him pretty much every day. I tell him about my day. I ring my dad every day on the way home from work, or like the morning of. Spoke to him this morning. I tell him, you know, going on this today. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to having a chat. And he was like, "Oh, make sure you give me advice." And like, still, just naturally, that's what he does. So yeah, my dad. I also have like one or two really close friends. Like, one of them, unfortunately, lives on the other side of the world now. But whenever I have like a feeling of a situation, he's a project manager. The other guy's a salesperson, so he gets it. So they're probably the three people I talk to the most.
So you got your dad, you got your two friends, one of which is in sales and gets it. But I also know you've got an external coach, haven't you?
Yes, yeah.
Talk to me about your coach.
Ian, yeah, he's brilliant. Very successful business person throughout the years. What I really like about him, he's got a sales. You know, normally you have people who run business, sometimes maybe not got a sales background, but he worked his way up through business in sales. I class him as my therapist. Right. Like, if I'd gone through I went through a bit of a breakup about 2 years ago, and I didn't tell him, but he knew something was up, and I spoke to him, and he said, "Right, next hour we're going to just put Jack Hankey back together." And it was brilliant. I'll always be thankful for that. But there's time like I could be sometimes a little bit rash to action. He's really helped me like understand feedback loops, made me much more mature. You know, I wouldn't be in a position I'm in today if it wasn't for the support he's given me. Because it's nice to have someone who, you know, I've got Brian and Jimmy and Orlan Swifty, etc., who can lean on for advice. But that's very much Leyton-centric advice. This is completely just, he calls it Operation Jack Hankey. Like, this is Jack Hankey's world, let's do it.
So I love that. Just for the listener, Brian, Swifty and Jimmy are senior people in your current business. Yeah. Your coach is external to the business. And has your coach done a similar role to yours before and had success in it?
I think he's been like a sales director and managing director, worked for various different companies. Hasn't done the sales development side, like lead generation. So, sometimes I'll be saying something to him, he's like, "Can you just explain that?" Yeah. What that means. But at the end of the day, like one thing I took from him is how to basically build a function. When I took this job, all I'd ever done was manage maximum 7 people in my team, salespeople. So then taking over a department, a really important department as well at Leyton. Like, this is where we, really breed our future talent.
Sounds like, here's the key thing.
Yeah.
They've walked in your shoes
in
sales
exactly.
leadership, right? And they're external to the business.
Yeah.
So I suppose my question to you is like, how helpful has that been?
Yeah.
It feels like it's been instrumental. Let's just pick up though. And you've almost said like, I wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for my coach.
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah, so it would be like I say, I'd not really had experience of like managing departments, understanding, and I remember what I was saying now. He taught me this one thing about how to basically get results from a department, and it was like an equation, and I call it obey. So it's being obsessed with behaviours, activity, environment. That's all you need to worry about, and that will equal results. So I kind of like, as soon as I started the job, all I would talk about, I'd go around, I would annoy people in the office. That at that point, once I started getting that into it kind of clicked to me like, oh yeah, I'm going to learn a ridiculous amount from this guy, but that obey thing, behaviors, activity, environment, you can use it in anything. If you get people with the right behaviors, doing the right amount of activity, and you can create an environment that they can flourish in, we're going to fly.
How often do you speak with your coach?
Once a month, 4 to 5 weeks.
And here's the thing, you'll know this. Not at Leyton. Leyton have got an amazing coaching program. Obviously, we work with Leyton.
It's very good.
In terms of like the professional sales, though, you've obviously met hundreds, if not thousands, of salespeople.
Yeah.
Most don't have a coach.
No.
What do you think about that?
Years and years ago, I would be like, why? Now I'm like, why not? Why don't you have one? I'm very much of the opinion selling is it's an art, it's a skill. I would be a strong advocate that it gets to be an option at university for people to go and learn how to sell, because there's psychology around it, understanding people's bias. There's loads. You can become a bit of a nerd and get right into it, can't you? So when you don't have someone trying to better you, like any part of life, not just sales, but any part of life, if you can, you see people have personal trainers and all that, you're doing it because they're the expert. They know what they're doing. I'm not saying the coach is the expert, but it's 9 times out of 10, someone who's maybe been in your shoes, done that experience, they can help you get away from making mistakes. Now, don't get me wrong, I think people need to make mistakes. People need to fail, because that's the best way you can learn personally. But you can't always fail and make mistakes and just pick up the pieces. You need some guidance. So, like, if I get my team ever want to make a decision or that, I just say, run it by me. Let's just bounce ideas off you. Whenever I want to make a change, I go to the most senior people in my department. I'm thinking about this. What do we do? And then it's twofold. 2 reasons I do it is, number one, just to get some extra ideas, make sure I'm thinking right. But it's automatically getting buy-in from them. If they throw a few ideas in there, it's their plan.
How important do you think it is that your coach is external to the business?
Yeah, I think that's a big one, because I can actually talk to him about me without anything to do with Leyton. It's about what I need to do to develop, and he's not giving me answers to make me better because he wants better results. He's making me better. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that the likes of Swifty and Ryan do that. They don't. But it's still late. Like I would say I coach all my team. Not regularly, but just in general when we're having chats, I feel like we're coaching. I'm coaching them because we're giving them advice, we're talking, we're bouncing ideas off each other. No real structure to it. I've got a couple of my guys obviously on board with yourselves, and they're saying this, like, they're coming out of it going, oh, really, really enjoyed that chat because it just gave me a different perspective. That, yeah, Jack, you can teach a lot, but he was just talking to me, or she was just talking to me about this. And it opens up the mind. And I think they get buying because they know it's just all about them. So, yeah, it makes a big difference.
How honest are you with your coach?
Oh, probably too honest, to be honest. Yeah, to be honest. Yeah. I told him that. Obviously, I told him that, I was engaged and we broke up. So, I spoke to him about that. I've never met him. I've only met him on Teams.
Yeah.
But I feel like I can tell him pretty much anything. Like I said, I treat in my head, he's my therapist.
And it feels like, obviously, you cover both professional and personal with your coach, and that obviously gives him a full version of you. Imagine a world where, for whatever reason, that was all taken away. Coaching program wasn't provided. You didn't have access to a coach. Yeah. What would you do?
Probably lean on family and friends again quite a lot. I would, I was before, because I've only started having a coach in the last 2 years. Before that, YouTube was my best friend.
Would you go and get your own coach? If your company stopped providing the coaching?
Yes and no. I think.
What one is it?
So yes, I would want one, and I would want to go and get one. I'd happily pay for one. The no side of it is I wouldn't want to pick them.
Go on.
I would want someone to like similar to what you guys do. You sit down, you analyse the person, and they go, right, these are the 3 best fits for you.
Yeah.
That's what I would rather do it that way, rather than me thinking, right, who do I want? Oh, I like that person. Because then I might be in awe of them a little bit too much, and I might not want to open up, and I might not want to tell them about my mistakes. Whereas someone goes, this profile fits you because of you are like this, your mindset's there, your behaviours, all that. This is the right profile for you to work with. I'll just go, yeah, cool. I wouldn't want any bias on my side.
Right.
Picking someone I liked.
So, okay. So what I'm hearing there is if you lost your coaching program, you would want to coach, you'd invest in a coach, but you'd want help finding the right ones. You wouldn't want to make a mistake. I get that. So I feel like there's loads more we can ask, but let's talk about your current role then.
Yeah.
You are a coach, aren't you? Right, as well. You obviously you're the manager of the team, but you're also a coach. Talk to me about how all the coaching you've had, sport, personal, professional, from your dad, from your friends, from your current coach.
Yeah.
How's that shaped who you are as a coach?
Oh, good question. I think from my side, I try and be a bit of a Frankenstein with it. So, I think I've said it to you before. Like, I like to think I'm the coach that can be coached. Like, that is me. So that doesn't mean. So when I go and work with the guys, I'll lean on them a lot to what they want. I'll coach them all very differently, and my coaching style now is very different to what it was 3 years ago. Now it's very much personable. Talk to me, very conversational, structured around that, helping them really analyze like data and all that, not really selling stuff, because these guys are managing managers now. So it's talking to them about how they deal with people problems, and I think very different. When I was actually coaching the guy, I would do that very structured 2 or 3 sessions a week on. I would do 2 or 3 sessions a week. The first session would always be something that I'd come up with, like a random idea, and watch the YouTube on it or something. And I always say, you either qualify it in or you qualify it out. Either one is a success. Because if I've showed you something, it doesn't resonate with you, at least you're not going to waste your time trying to learn how to do that. You know it's not going to resonate with you. You can tick it off your list and move on. Because not every salesperson's the same. So, yeah, I'd say I'm a Frankenstein. I can coach I like to really understand my people. I'm quite, like, obviously we spoke about that, I like the personal side. If I don't know what I don't know. So if they're having a problem and they're struggling but they're not telling me, like, they all tend to tell me now, but when you first start managing people, they're not that open.
I'm sure you could appreciate why, though, someone would struggle to own up to you as the boss, versus why you would be too honest with your external coach, and that can always be quite difficult. If you've used the term Frankenstein, so you know, Frankenstein's monster, putting together all the best parts, etc. If you were to put together the perfect coach, what attributes do you think the best coach needs? And maybe try and take stuff from the coaches you've had.
Empathy, like emotional intelligence, they're probably the biggest ones. A real good understanding of the person you're dealing with, and something to add, like value to add. Like, there's plenty of coaches who think they're coaches, but they're adding nothing. They're just saying they are. Like, so actually being able to add value, and the value, it's like in a sale. You're not going to go and sell something to someone and just tell them that they need it. You're going to ask them questions. You're going to understand what their problems are and what they need, and where, you know, you ask ridiculous amount of discovery questions. And then you either say to them, right, we can do this to help you, or we can do this to help you. You don't just go, oh, we're not one size fits all kind of thing. So it's about really getting to understand and kind of selling and asking the questions that you need to go. So emotional intelligence, empathy, and then a real interest in the person. And
when we talk about real interest, this brings me back to what I was asking you right at the very beginning about the coach and if they care about you.
Yeah.
Right. It's very different when you're the manager. Like, you do care about those people because you've got a goal.
Yes.
You need them to hit that goal.
Yeah.
How do you manage that in the sense of when you're speaking with your external coach, right? It's Operation Jack Hankey.
Yes.
When you're coaching an individual in your business, there's Operation whatever their name is.
Yeah.
But there's also the business goals to hit. How do you balance that?
From my side, the Operation X, so like I'll use his name, Kyle. Kyle's the priority.
Right.
I would have, like, the way I look at my department as like a mini business at It's people first, results second. Because if you go for results first, the people will struggle. Because the buy-in's not about them. They could get burnt out because that's all you're talking about. If you make sure you put in the environment for your people first and making sure everyone's happy, they're enjoying themselves, they're learning, they're developing, the results come. results probably are 10 times better as well. Not 10 times, but a lot better. So yeah, I balance it by just focusing on the people.
So I love that answer. But sales is also a results business, isn't it? We live quarter to quarter, month to month, and I suppose there is still that balancing out. Like if your team all miss target for 3 months in a row, but you're saying but they're all really happy.
Yeah, we did when I started. Like the results were bad when I started in this job.
How bad?
Like they weren't great when I took on the department, and the first 3 months I didn't want to do anything. And what I mean by that, I wanted to silently observe the department. I didn't want to come in and tear it apart. I needed to get by, and I wanted to make sure I knew everything around the department, and the results weren't good. And I was getting calls for like, "Are you gonna change something here? Like it's not working." And then, not literally overnight. It was a planned approach, but it felt like overnight. Probably to people, I went, right, this is what we're doing. This is how we're gonna do it. Let's go. Here's the tools. Let's work together.
Right. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
What was this is what we're doing?
So I wanted to push on. So how we worked as a business, Leyton, like the sales development function was purely lead generation. That's why they saw themselves. I have worked in the last 16 to 18 months, I suppose, we're a revenue generating business. Right? That's what we need to do. So switching people's mindsets rather than getting a conversation started. It's getting a conversation started with a potential client who's going to yield revenue for the business. And that's what we talk about. So if you're setting up a meeting for business developers to go and attend, you've got to be proud and talk to that business. This is what I think the money's going to come in. This is what I think they do, where we can potentially help them. That was a big switch because like we would do, they would get paid. And I know it's bad and like for me to say, but we were getting paid on like a 10 or 15 minute conversation. Do class it as a meeting attended, and that's what you get paid on. And like, so I've then changed commission structure so they get paid on revenue now. They still get paid on lead generating, but a large portion is on the revenue number. So it's completely changed my mindset. Like I say, it's the training camp. I call it the training camp because I want these people to have a career in sales. Doesn't necessarily mean people can't have a career doing SDRs and stuff like that, but most of them are these guys we've got. A lot of them are really early 20s, they're trying to carve out a career. So we've got a great opportunity here when they're still in real like high-end learner mode to teach them how to do this job, get that skill. Like I said to you before, for me, it could be a degree sales with the amount of intricacies that are in there. So they're like some of the key changes I made. Made a couple of behavioural changes. The environment, it was tough. It was like a boiler room, that department. It wasn't nice. As in, it's just hard. You know what it's like. We've been on the phones. It's hard. If you're on a bad day, it's hard to pick up that phone. So we need to create that environment where we make it fun. Like today in Manchester, they're doing a activity day. I won't tell you what it's called, but it's a fun name. And
you have to tell us the name now.
All the best Mitsubishi early leave incentive day or something like that. So one of our managers is moving to London,
right?
And they have this thing. I don't know why they do it. It's called Mr. Bitty. It's weird. It's a Manchester thing.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, it goes over my head. I'm too old to understand what they're talking about half the time.
Right.
And they've got him. He's strange. But that's a fun day, and everyone's involved. And then everyone's going to go for have a drink after work together. We've got a bar booked out from not to like, but like creates that environment, makes it fun. They're doing the same job today as they do every day.
Right.
But all I'm hearing is everyone's having a laugh and enjoying the job in the office.
And that comes back to what your coach used to do, creating an environment for you, making it fun, making it enjoyable. We've got a goal to hit. Yeah. But let's have fun along the way because this is really hard.
Yeah. And we do like last week we did a national core day. So like Glasgow versus Manchester versus London. That really gets them fired up.
I bet.
You don't really need to do it. I ran the last one there was one last week, the one before that I did. And it was on when the Australian Open was on, so obviously I did a tennis themed core day.
Obviously.
And it's just there was nothing special. It was like just that thing, but everyone was like good, like angry if they lost.
Right.
And and then we also have like we call it the World Cup. So them 60 SDRs.
We'll go to.
No. We create a World Cup. So like groups of 4 play home and away.
That's what I mean. They all get a team. Like, they are a team. Right?
Yeah, and then it's knockout, and like people get like it always happens. It's happened for the last 2 years. I've for 2 years now. The semi-final always there's always a bad decision or a dodgy decision that I need to really think about, like because it's too close. Because obviously it's down who gets the most meetings booked and all that sort of stuff. It's like old school SDRing, but it's fun. It's only for a month, and it always comes down as a tie, and then there's like milliseconds in like how much people have spent on the phone that day. And you're like, I remember last year I ran the numbers 3 times, got 3 different results, and like one person won, then the other person won, and then it was like a tie, and I was like, what am I going to do here? I nearly did a penalty shootout, which is the whole department on a call, and them 2 people have to ring 5 numbers.
This needs to be recorded and put on YouTube.
I didn't do it because it was actually, I think it was like World Mental Health Day or something. I was like, that's not going to be good for people's mental health. So I just had to make a decision.
Bloody hell, VAR.
Yeah.
Okay, let's imagine someone's listening to this podcast.
Yeah, I hope so.
You're there. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You're there, Paddy.
Yes.
You've had that realisation that I'm crap.
Yeah.
What's the advice?
Be a sponge. Be open. Don't. Just because you're crap doesn't mean you're always going to be crap. Like, get that into your head. Like, everyone starts. You couldn't talk when you was a baby. Obviously, you couldn't walk and stuff, but you learn. Naturally, as people, we do want to learn. Especially, I do think people who get into sales, like, has a stigma, like, you only get in sales, you can't do anything else. Like I said, that's why I did it. Now I'm like, you couldn't do sales. I look at people like, you couldn't do sales. Like, this is hard. Like, and I speak to people like, yeah, I couldn't do that job. So I think the whole thing, I don't know if you felt this, but the whole stigma around sales is completely 180'd, where actually people are like, no, it's not. I don't know if you've seen the show like White Gold.
I loved White Gold.
Yeah, that's the impression that people have of salespeople, right? Years ago. Now I think it's gone 180 and everyone's like, yeah, that is a career.
So I don't think that's true, actually.
No,
let me.
Okay,
No, so let me tell you what I think happens to people like me and you that are on LinkedIn. I think our bubble changes. I think we're now surrounded by people in sales and the profession.
Yeah.
We follow people. I think our bubbles have changed that make us think, oh, sales is being respected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if me and you, when I walked down Newcastle High Street now and asked the average person, doesn't have to be in Newcastle, but that's where we are.
Yeah, yeah.
We asked the average person, what do you think of salespeople? I think we'd get all the same stereotypes.
Sleazer, pusher,
Yeah. Right. People won't get the type of sales that we do, like professional sales, software. But I think we can be guilty of thinking that, our bubbles take sales really seriously now.
Yeah.
The world does.
Yeah.
I think if you ask the average person out of your bubble, I think all the stereotypes will still be there. You're
probably right. Yeah.
Feels like you've done another 180.
I've done another 180. I'm not in a respectable career.
Have you got nieces and nephews, you say?
Yeah.
If one of them asked you or come to you and said, Unky Jack, thinking about getting into sales, what would you say?
Don't get into it, no one respects it. No, I'm joking. I'd say do it. Like the doors it opens, the opportunities it opens, what you can learn. The reason I got into sales originally was obviously because I felt like I couldn't do much else, but then also was like the earning potential was there. But I would try and avoid talking to them about that because the good thing about being able to earn more money, the bad thing is you feel the pressure when you don't, and then also you feel the pressure if you miss numbers and well, so it's like a double-edged sword. So I would highly recommend it because look at your granddad, look at your uncle. We've done all right out of it. We enjoy our jobs. You're going to have 2 pretty good coaches there as well.
I love that. You threw me slightly when you was like, look at your granddad, look at your uncle. I was thinking, they're lorry drivers. I was thinking of mine.
Yeah.
Do you think sales profession to be proud of then?
I do. I'm incredibly proud of what I do. I'm incredibly proud of myself, like being where I'm sat here today.
In the orange chair.
In the orange chair, yeah. But no, like, yeah, because if people ask me what I do, I kind of skirt around it a little bit more now because it's kind of hard to explain what I actually do. I'm still not 100% sure what I actually do. But I say, yeah, I'm in sales.
Right.
Like straight away, bang, in sales, working for tax consultancy.
But do you not feel that though? Like maybe this is my head trash and my imposture. I feel like if I speak to people, like say I go to my wife's company's do, right? And people say, what do you do? I just say, I'm in sales. I sense people. It's a bit like if I'll say to someone, who's your football team? And they go, I don't like football. You're like, oh. I feel like when I say to people, I'm in sales. And I just go, I'm in sales. I sense that, oh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you not feel that?
Yeah, I've actually probably felt it on like dates.
Okay.
Because I'm like, oh, now I know why you're asking all these questions.
Right.
Because you're trained to do it.
I get it, yeah.
And really, like, I think I did a LinkedIn video a couple of years ago about sales is just dating. Like, it was on Valentine's Day or something. And like,
smooth.
Yeah, it was good. But no, like, yeah, maybe like that instances. I don't really go to many events where I would talk to like different people and all that. Who I would be at the event because I'm there for work or something. But yeah, I feel it when like, yeah, if you go on a date or something like that, they click on.
Yeah, because you're off.
Or they don't go on a date with you because they're like, you work in sales, you're going to be...
You set an upfront agenda at the start of the meal.
This is what we're going to go through.
There's 2 outcomes at the end, right? If you had your time again, you go back to, you realise you need to get a job.
Yes.
And you've got your time again. What's one thing you do differently?
Not take 8 years to really understand what I'm doing. Like I say, I've only been doing it 10 years. I don't think that's a very long time. But 8 years is quite a long time to actually get your head around it. And so, yeah, I just have the mindset I had when I was 29, 28.
So what's the quickest way you could speed that up then?
What do you mean?
Well, not take 8 years. Say you had...
Oh, yeah, just completely switch your mindset. Have it so that you're going in there to learn. You're not going in there to sell.
Yeah.
That's it. Your job right now isn't selling. Your job's learning how to sell.
And what's the quickest way to learn how to sell?
Get a coach. You know, there's plenty of content online. Get stuck into it. Speak to the peers at the company. For me, like the big thing I say, like, you know, we're in a world now where hybrid working is a thing. And I'm a fan of it. I like the fact that people can work from home 1 or 2 days a week, and you know, do your washing. Like, for example, so you don't have to do it on Saturday and Sunday. But I stress whenever I hire, I was like, you need to be in that office for them first few months because what you're going to learn from your peers outweighs everything. Just hearing them on the phone, them hearing you on the phone. We have a really good culture at Leyton. Don't know if Swifty's told you about it. I call it the payback culture. Every single salesperson in my department, in the whole of Leyton, has been helped by a peer in the past. So they feel that they should pay it back. So I call it the payback culture. And it stems through the whole business. Anyone who's been there a while, you'll see them sitting with someone who's new and supporting them, helping them.
Love that.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a really unique. I've never worked at a company like it. It's very unique. Like sales is notoriously cutthroat. Every person for themselves want to just be number one. Don't care how they get there. Don't care who they push past to get there. At Leyton, it's celebrated. Yeah, I'd like to be number one, but I'd like everyone to be past quota and everyone to be smashing it. There's still that little bit of competition, but I've never met a sales company like it.
I love that. Jack, it brings us to the end of the interview. Like I could sit here and talk to you about loads of stuff for a lot longer. The thing I want you to do before you say goodbye is you mentioned before we started recording that you've seen some of the previous guests on the podcast, etc.
Yep.
Is there, and if there is, I want you to look at your camera there, and I want you to basically invite someone on, that you would love to hear their story of how they used to be crap at sales and join me on the podcast. So take your time. If you think too long, we'll edit that bit out. But when you're ready, if you could just look down that camera and invite someone onto his podcast, just tell them why they should come on.
So I'm going to nominate Will Barron. So Will, Jack here. I think you should come on the podcast. It'd be really interesting to understand your story, how you got to where you have. Your content has massively helped me in my career. So it'd be nice to hear your story.
Jack, thanks so much for not only making the effort to come up to the studios and sit in the orange chairs, but just for what has been just an amazing conversation. Really brought something to it that's quite different to the other podcasts. And I always love the sport analogy and the coaching in sport analogy and how that translates into sales. But you've just been so open, so honest, and really embraced that we could all sit here and we could have sat here and done a podcast about how successful you've been.
Yeah,
like we could have done, but no one really learns from that. You've embraced the I used to be crap at sales podcast, really been honest, and it's made for a great listen. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.